Like I told you, now we are starting to see these systems add these chain of thought processes to these models. And we have things like RAG and other ways to use agentic AI to actually go and fetch, the latest information from the internet or from other documents.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Ask Valor Mastermind podcast, brought to you by A Advanced Services and Fuse Networks. My name is Galen.
I'm Joe.
We're coming at you from the underbelly of the Creative Block Studios in Seattle, Washington. Before I turn over to Joe, just want to say thank you to our audience and followers for getting us over 500 subscribers on our YouTube channel. So looking to get to 1,000. But Joe, please tell our audience how we started on our podcast journey.
Yeah, so it first started out as a Facebook group page. The purpose was really to bring business owners together to communicate with one another, ask questions, share tips, kind of help each other out. Because we're a marketing company, we get asked a lot of questions outside of marketing. So we thought, what a better way than to bring on different guest speakers like our guest today and just share their knowledge with our audience and learn something and implement something in their business.
Awesome. So kind of the big elephant in the room nowadays is AI, right?
Yep.
Artificial intelligence. It's hard to move away from that. So we are so honored to have David Espola, the author of Soulful, You in the Future of Artificial Intelligence, joining us today on how AI is changing business. But David, could you please introduce yourself to our audience, please?
Yeah, I'll be more than happy to do that. But first of all, thank you guys very much for having me on the show. It's a great pleasure to be here with you. So let me give you a little bit about my background. I've spent 30 plus years in the technology industry. I started out as an engineer. I worked in Silicon Valley at two very fast growing computer technology companies, one of which did an IPO. So that was just a tremendous experience for me because I got to experience firsthand just the power of technology and the power of entrepreneurship. And then after that, I decided that I wanted to go work for a large software company. So I went to work for Oracle. I worked there for 10 years in the consulting business, helping Fortune 500 companies implement technology and improve their business processes. And during that time, I got to work with a lot of CIOs. And so I decided to pursue a CIO career myself. And I was fortunate enough to have a boss who left Oracle, became a CIO, and then he invited me to go work with him so that I could get the experience that I needed. And when the right opportunity came along, I became the CIO of a software company in Chicago. And for the last few years, I started my own company. So I have my own company now. It's called Brainius, and we focus on technology, media, education, consulting, and business development.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. So now we come to the part of our podcast, our Advanced Services Pump You Up Quote of the Day. David shared a quote by Thomas Edison, which I'll actually, Joe, if you don't mind reading, and David, to get your thoughts.
I like this quote. I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that don't work. Why does that quote resonate with you so much?
Yeah, it's just amazing how, we're living at a time where things are changing so fast. A lot of it is driven by exponential technologies that are bringing unprecedented changes to business and society. So we really need to develop a growth mindset that allows us to experiment and try different things. And that's how you learn and that's how you grow. And, so Thomas Edison's quote is right on, right? So the idea of failure doesn't make sense in this context. You're not failing. You're trying different things. You're learning. You're seeing what works, what doesn't work. And so that's why I like that quote.
Okay, thank you. So now we are at our Fuse Networks Did You Know segment. So a couple of things we're going to bounce off you, David, and just similarly get your thought. Joe, could you read the first one, please?
Yeah. New IDC research predicts that AI will contribute $19.9 trillion to the global economy through 2030 and drive 3.5% of the global GDP in 2030.
Yeah.
So can you share some thoughts on just the scope of it? It's hard when you're thinking in the billions, let alone trillions, what that means for the everyday business owner. But kind of talk us through that, please.
Yeah, I think, the big picture here is that AI is going to change everything. It's going to bring unprecedented changes to business, to society, and it's going to add a considerable amount of abundance and wealth to all of us. So I think, there's a lot of people that fear what AI might do, especially regarding jobs, right? I think the big fear is that AI is going to replace a lot of jobs. And I don't want to discount that as something that we need to worry about or we need to talk about. But, the other side of this coin is that AI is going to create abundance, unlike anything we've ever seen before. It's going to increase, the amount of wealth that's going to be generated in the economy. And that's why I'm very optimistic about what AI is going to do for us.
Awesome. And then I'll read this trend and get your thought on it. So we are now adding chain of thought to Gen AI applications so that the models can not only generate results that are based on probabilistic predictions, but also include step-by-step reasoning. So there's a lot there. Can you break that down and share why it's important for our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you guys, I'm sure you've heard the recent announcements with OpenAI coming up with the O1 model. And what's really different and fascinating about this model is that it goes beyond what we have seen so far with these generative AI models. So up to now, generative AI was primarily a predicting machine, right? So it is really, really good at looking at the context, looking at the prompt, and then coming up with the next token or the next word, the next phrase, and the next page. So it can generate a lot of great content, whether it's text or pictures or video, based on that prediction process, which is probabilistic in nature. But now what we're starting to see is companies like OpenAI is adding chain of thought to that process. So the machines in the past were limited because there was a lot of, I'm sure you've heard of hallucinations, right? Sometimes the model would not have the information that it needed to give you the right answer, so it would just make up stuff, which is terrible, right? Because you lose credibility when you do that. But now with the ability to add chain of thought, what we can do is we can have these machines go step by step, which makes them much, much more intelligent. And I think the best way to think about this is, if you give ChatGPT, for instance, a math problem to solve, ChatGPT is not very good with numbers. It doesn't really know how to handle the numbers. But if you give it step by step and say, take step A, add these numbers, then divide these numbers and multiply these numbers, then it's going to give you an excellent answer back. So that's what we're starting to see now, is that chain of thought being added to the generative AI models.
So for our audience out there, there's a lot of business owners listening or watching this episode right now. AI is largely unknown for them, or they may know some aspects of AI of, oh great, I could create a social media copy or content for my newsletters. Can you talk a little bit more just for more of the everyday, not just the big technology kind of companies or businesses, but for the everyday business on the AI effect on how it will affect like almost the everyday business?
Yeah, so, AI is going to bring new capabilities to small businesses. So, in fact, there is a general belief within the technology and the AI community that we're going to start seeing unicorns, companies that are worth $1 billion or more with just a handful of founders or employees. So just think of the magnitude of that in terms of the impact that it's going to have. And so if you are a small business owner today, I think it's really, really important that you start getting educated on understanding what this technology is all about, what it can do for you. And there are many, many programs and resources available to help small business owners get a basic understanding of AI. And then the second thing that I would recommend is that start playing with it. Start becoming familiar with it because you're going to need it. So don't be afraid of it. Go right in. Start with something as simple as ChatGPT. Start playing with ChatGPT, and then try to become good with prompting. Right. So there's something called prompt engineering, which is techniques that you can use to get better answers out of these models. So start learning more about how can I improve my prompt? How can I use ChatGPT in ways that it will be more detailed and more accurate in the way it answers back my prompts. And there's some simple things that you can do. You can, some of the key techniques that people use is give it a lot of context, right? Because the systems don't have any context. And they were trained to be very generic, in general. So they don't have deep expertise per se in any particular domain. But if you give it the context, then it becomes much better in the way it responds. Another trick that you can use is give it a persona. Say, I want you to take on the role of a lawyer. So help me figure out some of these questions that I have about this contract. Or take on the persona of a marketing expert. Help me figure out how I can improve my website. Things along those lines. So there's a lot of things that small business owners can start doing right now to start leveraging this technology. And then as this progresses, what we're going to start to see is the technology is going to be embedded in everything that we do. So, if you have a CRM system, if you have a marketing system, if you have a financial system, they're all going to have AI embedded in them. So eventually, whether you like it or not, you're going to start to use AI.
So is there a difference between, let's say ChatGPT and Gemini as far as the capabilities of each different AI tool?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different models out there. So all of these models come from the same base. So there's an evolutionary tree, if you will, where we started with these general models, and then each company sort of branched out and started doing things a little bit different. So you see companies like, OpenAI and Google and Meta and so on, and they are developing their own models, and they all have their, pros and cons, and they're all changing extremely fast. So it's just amazing the speed at which these models are improving. But essentially, they all are based on large language models, which means they use a huge amount of data that they are trained on. A lot of this data comes from the internet. So one of the things that people need to be aware of and need to be cognizant of is that there could be some bias in some of these systems because, as we all know, the internet is full of garbage, full of bias, and so we need to be a little bit careful with that. But these systems were trained to be very knowledgeable on a vast number of domains, but not very deep on any particular domain. And then there are techniques that you can use to really get the systems to become better at dealing with some very specific domains. So there's something So prompt engineering is one of the things that you can do that I just talked about, provided more context, and there's several other techniques that you can use from a prompt engineering standpoint. There's something called Retrieval Augmented Generation, where you can upload information to these large language models with information that's specific to the domain that you're interested in, and then these systems will learn from the information that you're providing, and then you can ask questions that are related to a specific business or a particular area of research, and the answers you're going to get back are going to be much, much, much better.
I'm going to put you on the spot, and I want to see how AI can transform an industry. So let's say I am in the roofing industry, right? How does the roofing industry use AI to better their business?
Yeah, so it's interesting that you're asking that question, because I am right now working with a construction client, and we are helping their workforce become more familiar with AI. So there's a lot of interesting things happening in construction. So construction is a little bit behind in actually adopting AI, but it's starting to catch up. So there are things that you can do, like using drones to take pictures of construction sites, including roofs, and then you can from that determine the progress of the project. How far are you in that construction project, and you can compare that to your project plan and see how well you're doing. You can look for defects. So if there's some kind of issue with the material or something is not quite right with that construction process, you can use AI to find those defects. So computer vision is huge in the construction business. If you have a complex project that has a lot of different steps, you can use AI to help you with the project management side of things, understand what the constraints are, and help you optimize that project plan. So there's actually quite a lot that AI can do for construction in general, and including people that work with roof construction or repair.
So I have a question. So no matter what size of organization or business, is there a point where what is the point where businesses need to hire a consultant for like AI road mapping? Like they've used AI on their own. I got good at prompts. The business owner got good at prompts, but there's a point where I want to implement it organization-wide, and maybe people are using certain tools for certain aspects. Have you worked with clients, or do you see it coming where a consultant comes in, and no different than a CRM system streamlining communication, like with chat or instant messaging? Can that kind of implementation be brought together with AI? Because I saw that as one of the services that you offer is the AI road mapping. But when does a business owner say, "Oh, I just need to hire a consultant or someone to help me find the position"?
Yeah, I think there are many different stages where that might be helpful. So maybe you just don't know where to start, right? So you're at a point where you've heard about AI, you have some rough idea of what AI is all about, but you're not quite sure how it can impact your business. So a consultant can definitely come in and help you determine that. So I'll give you an example of a more specific case that I worked on with a client. So we had a client that came in, and they provide billing services for people that do therapies, and that process can be quite complex, because you need to make sure that you're entering the right code, and there's a lot of detail behind the billing process for those types of services. So they wanted to come up with processes that were based on AI, that were automated. And the whole idea was that, if you're a therapist and you're having a conversation with a client and there are certain medical procedures that you are recommending, based on that conversation, you can record that conversation, obviously, if the client gives you permission. And then based on the conversation, the system should be able to determine, what are some of the things that we're talking about, what are some of the therapies that were applicable, and then what are the billing codes that should be used for this particular conversation. So, obviously that's a very specialized need, and definitely you would want to hire consultants and people that really understand the technology really well in order to help you do something like that. But for most people, you don't need to go that far, right? You can just leverage existing tools, and maybe it's a question of getting some training on, how do I best leverage some of the tools that are readily available to me. I'm sure you have heard of agentic AI, which is, we now have several open source publicly available capabilities where you can actually have the AI work with these agents, and the agents are capable of putting together a solution that's more complex than what you find in just general kinds of business processes, and so learning how to do that would be very beneficial and you don't need to have a lot of technical knowledge. You don't even need to, sometimes you don't need to know how to code, because the visual applications out there that you can use to help you put together these agentic AI processes. And it can really be helpful with, specific business processes that you might want to automate.
So what do you see as how are businesses misusing AI, I would say? Are there one or two things you see businesses do that they shouldn't do as it relates to using AI?
Yes, so let me give you some thoughts on that. The thing that you should definitely not do is go to ChatGPT, ask it to come up with a document that you copy and paste straight out of ChatGPT and send to your customer. That's a big no-no, right? Because ChatGPT is great at getting you to 80%, but you should never take anything out of ChatGPT and send it straight to a customer. So make sure that you understand the domain that you're dealing with, right? So don't just rely on whatever ChatGPT is telling you. So there's some interesting cases, right? I think you guys may have heard of the lawyer that came up with a ChatGPT document and used it, and ChatGPT basically hallucinated and came up with things that didn't exist. Cases, it was citing cases that were made up. So don't do that. That's a big mistake. The other thing that you need to really be cognizant of is privacy, right, and security. So don't share your, personally identifiable information with these public systems, because whatever you're providing these systems, they're using this information to learn, right? So there's a learning process that goes on here. And if you're sharing, proprietary information with these systems, that information could become publicly available. So you don't want to do
that. Joe, ask David about the website content.
All right. So this is something we've heard. Can you explain to our audience why you don't want to have ChatGPT or any other AI tool write content for websites?
So I wouldn't say don't use it for content for website. I would say use it to get you started. So you can have ChatGPT. You have an idea, right? I want to write a blog post, and I want to write about, I don't know, longevity, which is something that I'm very interested in, right? So I shouldn't go to ChatGPT and say, write me a blog post about longevity and then just copy and paste and put it on my website. But I can, maybe I want to get something started. So I may go to ChatGPT and say, I want you to write me a blog post about longevity. I want you to include, what are the latest longevity science discoveries that I could talk about? What are some of the things that people can do today to increase longevity? What are some of the recommendations that's coming from the medical community? And the more specific your prompt is, the better answers you're going to get. And then make sure you read it, make sure you edit it, make sure you add your own voice to it. So, otherwise, if everybody is just posting content that's generated by AI, pretty soon we're just going to have a blend of non-value add junk out there, right? And that's one of the worries that's actually a significant worry in the AI community today.
And from what time or up to what time frame does ChatGPT pull content off the internet from? I know when ChatGPT first started, they were saying, it was pulling up until September of 2021, right? So that means ChatGPT is basically pulling information from the internet, right? And the reason why you wouldn't use it on a website is because it's plagiarizing, right? So, but now with ChatGPT, what is the latest stat that you know of or that you've heard of the time frame in which ChatGPT is pulling content down from the internet?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So what happens is, these systems are trained based on, these huge data that comes from the internet. And so what it learns up to that point when it was trained. And this training is extraordinarily expensive to do, right? So you're not retraining these systems every month or anything like that. And so until recently, if you went to ChatGPT and you asked a question that was more recent than when it was trained, you wouldn't be able to give you that answer. But, like I told you, now we are starting to see these systems add these chain of thought processes to these models. And we have things like RAG and other ways to use agentic AI to actually go and fetch, the latest information from the internet or from other documents. So we can still use that general training up to that point in time, but then it's smart enough to know that if it's an answer that requires going back to the source, the more recent source, to be able to more up to date, then it knows how to do that. So we're starting to see improvements in that area.
So if our audience is looking to get in touch with you, what's the best way to connect?
So one way to connect is to just go to my website, davidespola.com, and there's a form there that you can use to get in touch with me. Another way is to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm fairly active on LinkedIn. It's easy to find me. Just search David Espola, and I'll be happy to connect.
I got one last question, or maybe two, but I think it'll be one. So what are you looking forward to most on how AI will change our lives within the next 5 years? Is there something positive that you're really looking forward to that people may not be talking about that you really see in terms of a vision or where we'll be in 5 years?
Yeah, so thanks for that question, because there's actually one thing that I'm super, super excited about. And it's what I referred to earlier, longevity science, longevity research. We are on the cusp of finding new discoveries that I believe will add 20 to 30 healthy years to our lives. So these discoveries are happening right now. So we have a much better understanding today of aging, the process behind aging. And now that we have that understanding, with the help of AI, we can run a lot of different simulations that will help us come up with ways to potentially intervene so that we can delay aging The biggest challenge is that these things require human trials, and these human trials take a long time. So I don't expect to see any significant, marketable solutions for maybe 15, 20 years. But what we can do today is, we can start leveraging lifestyle changes that will keep us healthy and alive for the next 20 years. And then 20 years from now, the changes that we're going to see are going to be just extraordinary. So I think it is one of the most exciting things that's happening out there. I think we're going to see an explosion of people that are going to become centenarians. And that has a lot of implications to business, to society. It changes completely the idea behind retirement, Social Security, and actually, from my standpoint, I think it helps people that are prepared are going to have many more years of compounding, and that could be very, very powerful. So that's what I'm excited about.
Awesome. Well, we'll keep it right there, ending on a positive note. So thank you, David, for coming on and sharing that. It's a topic that is, like we said earlier, the elephant in the room that people sometimes don't understand. So on behalf of our sponsors, Advanced Services and Fuse Networks, my name is Galen.
I'm Joe.
Coming at you from the underbelly of the Creative Block Studios in Seattle, Washington. David, thank you again for joining us on this episode of the Ask Valor Masterminds podcast. Thanks everyone for watching and tuning in. Want a slam dunk space for your next event? We're here at the Creative Block Studios in Seattle, Washington, which is also the Ask Valor Masterminds studio. Great place for product demonstrations, sales trainings. We've had our 100th episode here. Photo shoots, great for photographers, videographers.
I love the idea of having a party. Let's say you have kids and they want to play video games. Come down and rent the studio, $250. You can have a bunch of multiple screens put up in different gaming systems.
And $250 is for the whole day. You have it for a full 9-hour slot. So if you want to, for 2 hours, 4 hours, the full time, $250 flat rate with all the resources available, Wi-Fi, private space, right outside the heart of Seattle. So easy to get to from multiple people coming from all over the place. But what a great promotion. Just to the end of 2024. Check out Creative Block Seattle.